The IB Economics internal assessment is responsible for many nights spent fruitlessly staring at the computer, and often to no avail. School teachers may ask you to choose a new article, write a new commentary, and basically start from zero again. Are you too a victim of this? Don't worry. My name is Zineri and I've compiled a great guide to help you best tackle your economics IEs. But before we start up, just listen. Those taking their IB exams in 2022 and beyond, meaning that you're starting your coursework in 2020, have even more reason to give your IEs special attention. The IBU has changed the economics syllabus this year and made some significant changes. And if you haven't heard about it already, here are a few snapshots. If you're studying SL economics, your IA commentaries are now worth 30% of your overall grade. Paper 1 is also worth 30%, while Paper 2 is worth 40%. So your IA has become important while your Paper 1 has decreased slightly in value. But if you're studying HL economics, your Paper 1 scores make 20% of your overall grade, Paper 2 and Paper 3 make up 30% each, and your IA stand at only 20%. Not only, but 20%. So the Paper 3 has become slightly more important while Paper 1 has become slightly less important. You will also be interested to learn that there will be a new topic focus on sustainability. This focus will include sustainability and poverty, environmental sustainability and sustainable development goals. Adding the same viewpoint to your IA essay is going to really impress your examiners, so it might be a good idea to add a paragraph or two about it. Now each of your 3 IAs will be based on your units 2, 3 or 4. Pick one each time and don't repeat it. The commentary needs to highlight a key economic concept that acts as a lens through which you analyze the article. Now you know what the concepts are. They are scarcity, choice, efficiency, equity, economic well-being, sustainability, change, interdependence and intervention. At least pick one for each with no repeats. Now before we start, let's look at the internal assessment criteria. There are 5 internal assessment criteria for each commentary. And each commentary is assessed individually for the first 5 criteria, that is A to E, and the criteria F is applied to the whole portfolio, making a maximum of 45 marks. For criteria F, just need to ensure that you fulfill your basic formatting requirements for your IB economics, that is your font, your size, your spacing. Make sure that each article must be based on a different unit of the syllabus and you must use different sources for each commentary. So think of it as almost 3 free marks, right? Now let's jump to the IA. The most difficult part is to choose a relevant article, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to find the right article. The first is the date. Check with your school teacher on this. The article must usually be written in the last year and preferably, though not necessarily, in the last 6 months. Any article written before that month would be considered outdated. Second is the time. The article must be from a reputable news source, example the New York Times, Times of India, BBC News, Economics Times, etc. And it should not be from any informal news outlet or some tabloid. Third, the content. The article cannot have a full economics analysis already spelled out for you. Also, you have to be careful that your article should contain a problem, a solution, and some pros and cons of the solution. Now, usually the pros and cons come in the form of a short one-liner from ministers, governments, officials, or other individuals like, say, the local farmers, the firm owners, etc., quoted in the article. Fourth is the length. It should neither be too long nor too short. A good length would be, say, 2.5 to 3 pages, excluding pictures. This ensures that you have enough meat for your analysis. And lastly is the treatment. After you've selected your article, highlight the full sentences that you'll be making references to in your commentary. The examiner will then zoom into the highlights, the portion that you've highlighted when reading your article. When saving the article, the header, the footer, the page number of the article should be made visible. Now, hope this was clear. Now let's move on to write your entire commentary. The first part is the introduction. We recommend that you have an opening statement that briefly describes the article. An example would be, this article highlights the steps which Singapore's government is taking to mitigate the contractionary effects which COVID has on the Singapore economy. Unlike in your essays, you don't really have to define keywords or key terms unless they are of great importance and relevance to your commentary. Remember, your word count is key, which is 800. Try to limit your introduction to less than 150 words. Post this, we move on to the second step. The second step is to explain the key problem and how it arose. You need to do this via diagrams. Now, while explaining the problem, use textual quotations. They are very important. For example, if your commentary is on recession, explain how the recession has arisen. Now, quote the circumstances as mentioned in the text. Example, millions are cutting back the expenditure amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, fearful that they will be unemployed in the near future. Now, after that, insert a suitable diagram, in this case, an ADAS diagram, and explain it, still quoting from the text and linking it to relevant economic concepts. Example, the AD curve shifting leftward, explaining that there is a decrease in aggregate demand since consumer expenditure, which is a component of the aggregate demand, has decreased. Note that words in the diagram are not counted in the 800 words limit. Hence, take care to label your diagrams fully with headings. For example, the market for cars in California. Label your axes, your points of intersections. Label them with alphabets so you can refer to them later. And lastly, shaded areas if they are applicable. Example, for dead weight loss, which generally is used for market failure. Now, sometimes articles can also give you specific data to work with. Example, the price of 1 cup of rice increased from 3.10 to 3.95. In these circumstances, you may label your price, that is your y-axis on the diagram, with the exact figures, that is 3.10 and 3.95, to show the increase. The same applies if they give you exact quantities for the x-axis. In short, the more specific your diagram is, the better. Also, when explaining your diagram, make your explanations as detailed and in a step-by-step manner. Many neglect this, fearing that it will sound like a grandmother story, but the truth is, it is necessary to scoring well for your IA. Without it, there is no meat on which you can base your analysis. I hope this was clear up till now. Now let's move on to the main part of your IA, that is to evaluate the solutions with accompanying diagrams and explanations, of course. To connect the problem to its solutions used by the government, the central bank, etc., use one-liner connector statements, something to the likes of, hence the Indonesian government has enacted a fiscal policy. Also, it is important to explain the policy with a diagram. Example, for fiscal policy, you would shift the AD curve rightwards and explain how the shift occurs. Then the time has come for evaluation. Give 1 to 2 pros about the policy using information from the text. Note that by explaining the mechanism of the policy, that can sometimes be considered 1 pro. Follow 1 or 2 cons or disadvantages of the policy. There are some common examples like the strain on the government's budget and opportunity cost for policies which require the government to spend. Example, fiscal intervention, supply side policy, exchange rate policies, etc. Also remember to contextualize. Each article usually has unique information explaining the advantages and disadvantages of the policy used in that specific circumstance. Leverage on that information and incorporate it into your explanation. Let me give you an example. The article states, however, in this frugal society, the idea of spending large amounts of money on cars is frowned upon. Then you could potentially quote this piece of information and explain the fiscal policy may have its limitations because of the marginal propensity to consume may be low and the extent of the increase in the aggregate demand may not be that significant. Now post this, we come to the last part of your IA, and that is the conclusion. You cannot simply parrot or summarize what you've been saying in the commentary so far. Instead, you need to give a very valuable judgment. Now, do you think the policy should be implemented, and if so, why? If you don't think it should be implemented, what other better alternatives do you have? What factors did you consider? These are some factors that you can use to weigh up the pros and cons. You may or may not explicitly state these factors in the conclusion, but you can use them. Long-term versus short-term effects, assumptions made, priorities. Is it a recession that you need to pull the country out of immediately, else suffer the adverse effects? Who are the stakeholders and how are they affected? Pros versus cons. What is the magnitude? Is it for the better or the worse? Are there any alternatives that eventually take a stand? Or at least state and explain what factors the final stand would depend on. For example, that you need more information. Example, the decisions to implement such a trade policy would depend on the exact terms and conditions of the policy. I really hope this has helped you understand what is required, and always remember that you can reach out to me in any case, in case you have any queries and you are not alone through this. DM me or reach me on Instagram. The link is in my description. Wishing you all the best for your eyes. Give it your best shot. Signing off.